Elias Ward stepped carefully over the glowing, uneven terrain. The planet stretched endlessly around him, a landscape of purple mist and strange, luminescent plants that seemed almost alive. His boots made soft, crunching sounds against the crusty surface, but the forest around him was alive with noises. Whispers of wind, strange rustles, and distant calls he could not identify. He had been sent here as part of a research mission, a scout for human colonization efforts. Officially, the planet was uncharted, and unofficially it was rumored to harbor life that no human had confirmed. He paused and adjusted the strap of his gear. The air smelled faintly sweet, like the smell of ripe fruit mixed with ozone. It was breathable, though slightly heavier than Earth's atmosphere. Every time he took a step, the soft glow from the plants around him reflected on his helmet, making the forest seem alive. He had seen alien flora before, but something about this place felt different. There was a strange energy here, a sense that he was not just walking through a forest, but through a living mind. Then he heard it, a soft, almost delicate cry. At first he thought it was the wind, or perhaps some bird-like creature in the trees, but the sound persisted, trembling and unmistakably desperate. It was a sound that would draw the attention of anyone with a heart. It was a baby's cry. Elias froze. He scanned the forest around him, every sense alert. There was no human colony here, and no record of baby creatures on this planet. Yet the sound continued, coming from deeper within the mist. He felt a strange tug in his chest, a mix of fear and instinctive compassion. Humans had a unique way of responding to such cries, a reflex almost impossible to ignore. He moved toward the sound cautiously. Each step was careful, calculated as he tried not to disturb whatever might be out there. The mist thickened, glowing faintly with colors he had never seen before. Deep violets, greens that shimmered like emeralds, and pale blues that looked like soft moonlight. Then, just ahead, he saw a small figure lying near the roots of a massive glowing tree. It was tiny, almost no bigger than a human toddler, but clearly alive. Its skin shimmered faintly, semi-translucent and pale green, and it had delicate limbs that twitched nervously. Its eyes were large and dark, filled with fear, and it let out another small cry as Elias approached. He knelt slowly, holding out his hands in a gesture of peace. "Hey, it's okay," he whispered, though he doubted it understood him. Still, the sound of his voice seemed to calm the infant slightly. Its cries softened, and it looked at him with cautious curiosity. Before he could reach the creature, the ground trembled slightly, and a tall, imposing figure emerged from the shadows. Elias froze, eyes wide. The creature was unlike anything he had ever seen. It towered over him, at least 2 meters tall, with multiple limbs that moved with grace and precision. Its skin shimmered with iridescent colors reflecting the light of the forest. Its eyes were enormous, deep, and intelligent, and they locked onto him immediately. Elias instinctively raised his hands, showing he meant no harm. The creature let out a low, almost musical hum that vibrated through the air. It stepped closer to the baby, positioning itself protectively between Elias and the child. Elias noticed that the infant seemed to recognize its mother immediately, wriggling toward the creature's legs. Despite the alien appearance, Elias understood the scene perfectly. This was a mother, and he was intruding. And yet the mother did not attack. Instead, she studied him carefully, head tilting, observing his movements. Elias realized that fear and intelligence were clear in those eyes. She was assessing whether he was a threat. He spoke softly again. "I don't want to hurt either of you, I just heard the cry and wanted to help." He took another cautious step forward, keeping his hands visible. The mother's multiple limbs moved slowly, almost in a dance before she emitted a sound, a low, vibrating hum that seemed to communicate something beyond words. Elias had no idea what it meant, but the tone carried warning and caution. He froze, realizing he was being tested. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the trees. Elias and the mother both turned toward the noise. A massive predator, its body glowing with bioluminescent patterns that camouflaged it perfectly with the forest, stepped into the clearing. Its eyes, sharp and calculating, fixed on the baby. Its mouth opened, revealing rows of translucent teeth, and it let out a chilling hiss. Elias's heart raced. He instinctively stepped in front of the infant, though he knew he could do little against such a creature. The alien mother's limbs flexed, preparing to strike. It was clear she was ready to defend her young at any cost. For a moment, Elias thought about running, but the baby's terrified gaze stopped him. He could not leave it behind. The predator lunged. The mother reacted instantly, moving with fluid grace to intercept it. Elias, relying on training and quick thinking, grabbed a glowing vine nearby and swung it, distracting the predator momentarily. He realized he and the mother would have to work together to survive. Neither could do it alone. In those moments, Elias felt something shift inside him. Humans were explorers, survivors, but more than that, they were empathetic. They answered cries for help, even from creatures they did not understand. He reached out slowly toward the baby, keeping eye contact with the mother. She seemed to understand his intention and allowed him a step closer. The predator roared again, shaking the ground. Elias grabbed a nearby rock and hurled it, aiming for the creature's glowing eyes. The predator stumbled and the mother seized the opportunity, striking with incredible precision. The predator yelped in pain and retreated temporarily, but it would not give up. Elias knew they could not stay in the open. He glanced around and saw a narrow path between two massive glowing trees. "This way," he shouted to the mother, gesturing toward the path. She hesitated, then, after a tense moment, began moving. The baby clung to one of her limbs, wailing softly. They ran through the mist, Elias keeping pace as best as he could. The forest seemed to respond to their passage. The glowing plants bent and shifted, some releasing spores that added to the thick haze. Elias felt a mixture of awe and fear. He had explored alien worlds before, but none had felt this alive. None had felt like it was watching him, testing him. At one point, the mother stopped abruptly. Elias almost collided with her. She raised multiple limbs in a protective gesture, emitting a low, vibrating sound. The baby's cries grew louder. Elias realized the predator had caught up again. He looked around desperately, spotting a cluster of thick vines hanging from a tree. Without thinking, he grabbed one and swung it, trying to block the predator's path. The mother reacted instantly, using the distraction to push the baby toward a narrow crevice between two trees. Elias followed, keeping his eyes on the predator. It hissed, its glowing patterns flashing aggressively. He felt a surge of human determination. He would not let this baby die. Not when he was the only one who could answer its cry. The mother and baby slipped through the crevice and Elias squeezed in after them. They emerged into a small clearing, partially shielded by massive ferns that glowed softly in the dim light. The predator skidded to a stop at the entrance, unable to reach them. It circled, snarling, then finally disappeared back into the forest. Elias sank to his knees, breathing heavily. The mother stood in front of the baby, scanning him carefully. She emitted a soft, low hum, one that Elias interpreted as a combination of warning and gratitude. He reached out slowly, still keeping his hands visible. The mother tilted her head, then stepped aside slightly, allowing him closer. The baby whimpered, reaching out toward him. Elias knelt fully now, holding out both hands. "It's okay," he whispered again. "I won't hurt you." The baby hesitated for a moment, then crawled toward him, touching his gloved hand with a delicate finger. Elias felt a strange warmth spread through his chest. He had never felt anything like this before. For the first time since he arrived on this planet, Elias allowed himself to breathe. He was alone with an alien mother and her child, trapped in an unfamiliar and dangerous forest. Yet somehow a fragile trust had been established. He realized that despite the danger, despite the strangeness of the world around him, this moment mattered. Humans had a unique gift, the ability to answer a cry, even from a completely alien life form. As he looked around the misty forest, Elias knew this was only the beginning. He had survived many missions, faced countless dangers, but nothing like this. He had to keep the baby safe, earn the mother's trust, and somehow find a way out of this alien world. Above them, the sky shimmered with strange lights, as if the planet itself were observing. Elias felt a mix of fear and awe, understanding that survival would require more than skill. It would require empathy, courage, and the uniquely human ability to care for another being, no matter how alien. And somewhere in the mist, he heard another soft cry. Not from the baby this time, but from deeper in the forest. The adventure was far from over. The forest seemed endless, its glowing plants casting soft, shifting lights that danced across Elias's helmet. Each step felt heavier than the last, not just because of the uneven terrain, but because of the responsibility now resting on him. He was no longer simply an explorer. He was a guardian. The alien baby clung to its mother's limbs, occasionally glancing at Elias with curiosity, while the mother, Lumina, as he had silently named her, kept a constant watch on him. Her many eyes bright and alert. The predator had retreated, but Elias knew it would return, and perhaps with others. The planet was alive in ways that humans could only begin to understand. He could feel the tension in the air, the subtle vibrations in the ground, and the way the mist seemed to shift whenever movement occurred. He realized that to survive, they needed shelter, and fast. They moved slowly, Elias taking the lead, stepping carefully over glowing roots and avoiding plants that reacted violently to touch. He noticed the subtle cues in Lumina's movements, the way she shifted slightly when danger approached or when a path was safe. Though they could not speak, he began to understand her gestures, her hums, and the rhythm of her steps. After some time, they came across a natural hollow in the roots of an enormous tree. The hollow was large enough to provide temporary shelter, and the glowing moss lining its walls gave off a faint, calming light. Lumina led the baby inside and curled protectively around it, her body radiating a warmth that Elias found reassuring. He knelt outside the hollow, observing her carefully. He wanted to help, but he knew that any sudden movement could be perceived as a threat. Slowly, he unpacked his survival kit, producing a small energy source to provide light and warmth. He placed it carefully near the entrance and stepped back. Lumina watched silently, her multiple limbs folded in a cautious but non-threatening posture. For the first time, Elias allowed himself to breathe. He realized just how fragile the baby was. Its skin seemed almost translucent, and it moved with a careful, delicate curiosity that made him acutely aware of his own size and strength. He had seen fragile alien life before, but this was different. The child depended entirely on its mother, and now indirectly on him as well. Night fell quickly. The mist thickened and strange sounds echoed through the forest. Chirps, clicks, and low vibrating calls that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Elias stayed alert, his senses on high. He could feel the presence of predators nearby, though they remained unseen. Lumina occasionally emitted a soft hum, communicating reassurance to the baby, and Elias tried to mirror the tone as best he could. At one point, the baby shifted in Lumina's grasp, reaching out toward Elias. He froze, unsure if the movement was an invitation or a warning. Slowly, he extended his hand, palm open and steady. The baby hesitated, then touched his fingers with an almost electric curiosity. Elias felt a jolt of connection, something deeper than instinct, a recognition that life, no matter how different, could understand care. The night was long. Elias stayed near the entrance of the hollow, keeping watch. He could hear creatures moving in the mist, their eyes glowing faintly. Lumina occasionally peeked over his shoulder, her body tense, ready to defend her child. Elias realized that they were learning from each other, humans and aliens alike, finding ways to cooperate without words. As dawn approached, Elias decided it was time to move again. Staying in one place too long would invite predators. He gestured to Lumina, indicating that they should follow a safer path he had noticed earlier, one that led toward higher ground. She seemed to understand and lifted the baby carefully, adjusting her movements to keep it secure. Elias followed, careful not to step on anything that could alert predators. The journey was slow. The forest was dense, and every step revealed new challenges. Strange plants released clouds of spores that shimmered in the morning light, and alien vines curled and twisted as if alive. At one point, Elias nearly tripped over a root that reacted violently to touch, shooting out a stream of glowing liquid. He jumped back just in time, narrowly avoiding being coated in a substance he suspected could be harmful. Lumina watched him closely, then gestured with a series of subtle hums and body movements that suggested caution. By midday, they reached a small clearing. The sunlight filtered through the bioluminescent canopy in a way that made the colors of the forest even more vivid. Elias could see a stream winding through the trees, its water clear but glowing faintly in shades of blue and green. He knelt beside it and took a cautious sip, then gestured to Lumina, showing that it was safe. She nodded, and the baby reached out eagerly, drinking from the stream under her careful supervision. While the baby drank, Elias took a moment to observe Lumina more closely. Her skin shifted in color, responding to light and movement. Her multiple limbs moved with a fluid grace that was mesmerizing, and he realized that her species had evolved in a way that was perfectly adapted to this forest. Their senses were finely tuned, their instincts sharp, and yet they exhibited care, intelligence, and emotion in ways that reminded him of humans. As they rested, Elias reflected on the connection forming between them. He was not just surviving alongside aliens, he was becoming part of a fragile alliance, one built on mutual trust and empathy. The baby's cries had brought him here, but it was their shared experiences, their cooperation in the face of danger, that was forging a bond. Their peace was short-lived. From deeper in the forest came a loud, unsettling noise, a low rumble followed by a series of clicks that reverberated through the trees. Elias recognized it immediately. The predator had returned, and it had brought others. He could hear the rustle of massive bodies moving through the mist, their glowing patterns flickering as they approached. He gestured urgently to Lumina, pointing toward a cluster of vines that could provide temporary concealment. She understood instantly, pressing the baby close and moving with him into the tangled foliage. Elias followed, crouching low and holding his breath as the predators passed nearby. He could see them now. At least 3 massive creatures, each with glowing eyes and shifting patterns that made them almost invisible in the mist. For a long, tense moment, they were still, hidden in the vines. Elias could feel his heart pounding, but he also felt a strange sense of pride. Humans had survived countless dangers throughout history, relying not just on strength but on intelligence, empathy, and courage. Here, in an alien forest, he was proving that same resilience. The predators eventually moved on, apparently uninterested in their hiding place. Elias waited until the sounds faded completely before emerging. Lumina adjusted the baby in her arms, then emitted a soft hum of relief. Elias mirrored the tone as best he could, and for the first time he felt a true sense of teamwork. As they continued their journey, Elias noticed subtle changes in the forest. Some plants seemed to recognize their presence, opening pathways or bending away. Others remained tense, glowing brighter as if warning of danger. He realized that the forest itself was alive in a way that required respect and attention. Every step had to be deliberate, every movement considered. By late afternoon, they reached a gentle slope that led to a higher plateau. From there, Elias could see the forest stretching endlessly, a sea of glowing colors and shifting shapes. He also noticed something else, distant structures, faint and almost imperceptible, that suggested intelligent life. Perhaps this planet was not only home to luminous species but to others as well. The realization made him cautious. They settled in a small alcove at the edge of the plateau, where the terrain offered natural protection. Elias used his gear to create a small barrier around them, a temporary measure to shield against predators or environmental hazards. Lumina seemed to approve, settling the baby beside her in a soft nest of leaves and moss. As night fell again, Elias sat quietly, watching the stars above. The planet's sky was different from Earth's, filled with strange constellations and shifting auroras. He thought about how fragile and precious life was. Here, on this distant world, he was part of something much larger than himself. The baby stirred in Lumina's arms, letting out a small cry. Elias moved closer, placing a hand gently on the ground near them. The cry softened, and he felt again that deep human instinct, the need to protect, to answer a call for help. Lumina glanced at him briefly, and he sensed approval. They were no longer strangers, no longer simply human and alien. They were a team, bound by circumstance, empathy, and the shared will to survive. Elias knew the journey ahead would be dangerous. The forest was unpredictable, the predators relentless, and the alien terrain unforgiving. But he also knew one thing with absolute certainty. He could not abandon the baby, and he could not fail Lumina. The cry that had drawn him here was a call to action, and he would answer it no matter the cost. The night deepened, and the mist swirled around them, glowing softly in the light of alien flora. Elias, Lumina, and the baby rested together, each learning from the other, each forming bonds that transcended species. In the vast alien wilderness, humanity had shown its unique strength, courage, empathy, and the willingness to answer a cry in the dark, no matter how strange or unfamiliar it might be. And somewhere in the watched, waiting for their next move. Elias knew the next day would test everything he had learned, but for now he allowed himself a moment of... The first light of dawn barely pierced the thick mist as Elias Ward scanned the plateau. The forest stretched endlessly, strange shapes and glowing plants shifting in the soft illumination. The predator from the night before had vanished, but he knew better than to assume it was gone for good. Survival on this planet required constant vigilance, and he could feel the tension in the air, a subtle vibration through the ground that suggested unseen life moving nearby. Lumina, the alien mother, stood protectively over her child, her skin shifting in soft hues as she scanned their surroundings. Elias noticed that she was no longer wary of him in the same way. There was trust there now, tentative but real. The baby, still fragile and trembling occasionally, reached out to him instinctively. Elias knelt, letting the infant touch his fingers. That simple connection filled him with determination. He would not fail them. They began their cautious journey down the plateau toward a valley Elias had spotted the previous evening. It appeared sheltered, with natural barriers that could keep predators at bay. The descent was tricky, the terrain steep and littered with glowing roots and jagged rocks. Elias moved carefully, signaling to Lumina when a path was safe. She responded with subtle gestures, her hums vibrating softly in acknowledgement. The baby nestled close to her chest, its small body responding to the rhythm of its mother's movements. Halfway down the slope, a sudden roar shattered the quiet. Elias's heart leapt as he glimpsed the predator, now joined by two others stalking toward them. Their glowing eyes fixed on the baby, and Elias felt a surge of adrenaline. The predators were intelligent, coordinated, and relentless. Retreating to the plateau was not an option. They had to face the danger and find a way through. Elias quickly scanned the area and noticed thick vines hanging from nearby trees. An idea formed. He whispered to Lumina, using gestures to indicate his plan. She tilted her head, hesitated, then followed his lead. Together they created a distraction. Elias swung the vines to catch the predator's attention, drawing them toward the moving shadows while Lumina shifted to shield the baby. The predators lunged, their movements rapid and precise, but Elias's quick thinking and Lumina's agility allowed them to evade the attacks. The predators hesitated for a moment, confused by the coordinated strategy. Elias realized that humans had an edge here, not brute strength but ingenuity. He grabbed a cluster of glowing rocks and threw them strategically, creating noise and flashes of light that disoriented the predators. Lumina moved with him, her limbs working in unison with his gestures, and together they herded the predators away from the baby. Finally, the predators retreated, slipping back into the dense mist of the forest. Elias exhaled, feeling the tension leave his body in waves. The baby stirred, making a small noise that sounded almost like laughter. Lumina emitted a soft hum, brushing her skin gently against Elias's arm in what he interpreted as gratitude. For the first time, he felt the true depth of their bond, not just survival but mutual respect and trust. As they continued toward the valley, Elias observed the subtle patterns of the forest. Some plants seemed to react to their presence, opening pathways or shifting aside, while others glowed brighter as warnings. It was as if the forest itself were alive, testing them, guiding them, and challenging their wits. Elias realized that surviving here required more than physical skill. It required understanding, observation, and empathy. By midday, they reached the valley. It was a natural haven, surrounded by cliffs and dense foliage that would provide protection from predators. A stream ran through the center, its water clear and slightly glowing, and patches of soft moss offered places to rest. Elias and Lumina moved cautiously, ensuring the area was safe before settling. The baby clung to its mother, exploring its new surroundings with careful curiosity. For a brief moment, Elias allowed himself to relax. They had survived the immediate dangers, but he knew the planet held more challenges. He set up a small camp using his gear, creating barriers and monitoring devices to alert them to approaching predators. Lumina watched silently, learning from his methods and incorporating them into her protective instincts. The baby explored under her watchful gaze, occasionally reaching out to Elias. Each small interaction strengthened their connection, a bond that transcended species. As evening fell, the mist thickened again and strange soft sounds echoed through the valley. Elias knew they could not remain passive. The predators were intelligent and could track them over long distances. He and Lumina devised a plan. They would create a false trail to mislead the predators while moving to a more secure part of the valley. Elias gathered glowing rocks and carefully scattered them, leaving misleading tracks while Lumina used her own abilities to create subtle disturbances in the environment. The plan was risky, but it worked. The predators followed the false trail, giving them time to reach safety. Night settled over the valley, and Elias and Lumina finally allowed themselves to rest. He sat near the stream, watching the water ripple in the soft glow. The baby slept nestled against Lumina's chest, and for the first time Elias felt a sense of calm. The bond they had formed was real, and he understood that humanity's greatest strength was not just survival or intelligence, but empathy, the ability to answer a cry, protect the vulnerable, and form connections that could overcome any difference. The following days were spent cautiously exploring the valley and its surroundings. Elias learned more about Lumina's species by observing her behavior, noting how she used her multiple limbs to gather food, navigate terrain, and communicate with the baby. He saw intelligence, care, and ingenuity that rivaled his own, and he realized that life across the galaxy could be vastly different yet equally remarkable. One day, while exploring a nearby ridge, Elias discovered evidence of other intelligent life, structures partially hidden among the glowing flora. They were ancient, covered in bioluminescent moss, and showed signs of past habitation. Elias realized that Lumina's species had not always been alone, and perhaps the predators were a result of ecological imbalance caused by previous inhabitants. He shared the discovery with Lumina through gestures, and she responded with soft hums, acknowledging the significance. The true test came unexpectedly. A massive predator, larger and more aggressive than any they had faced, emerged from the mist, its glowing patterns pulsating with menace. Elias and Lumina had to act quickly, using everything they had learned together. The timing, the coordination, the knowledge of the terrain. They set a trap. Elias used vines and rocks, while Lumina manipulated the environment with her limbs, creating a channel that would funnel the predator into a natural hazard. The predator lunged, but their plan worked. It fell into a deep, glowing crevice, trapped and unable to escape. Elias and Lumina watched cautiously until it disappeared into the depths. They had survived, but Elias knew that life on this planet would always demand vigilance. With the immediate threat gone, Elias considered the future. Lumina's species was fragile, the baby their only hope. He realized that his mission had changed. He was no longer simply an explorer. He was a protector, a bridge between humanity and an alien species. He thought about Earth, about human resilience and compassion, and understood that these qualities could extend across galaxies, shaping the future of life itself. Elias and Lumina spent the following weeks creating a secure area in the valley for the baby to grow safely. He taught Lumina techniques to enhance safety, while learning from her about the environment, food sources, and the subtle rhythms of the forest. Together they built a small sanctuary, a place where the baby could explore and learn without constant danger. One evening, as the sky shimmered with alien auroras, Elias sat beside the stream, watching the baby play under Lumina's careful supervision. He felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Humanity's unique strength, empathy, courage, and intelligence had created a bridge across species and worlds. They had survived not just by force, but through understanding and cooperation. Lumina approached him, her limbs brushing lightly against his arm in a gesture of trust and acknowledgement. Elias smiled softly, realizing that they had formed something extraordinary, a bond that transcended language, biology, and the vast distances between stars. They were partners in survival, allies in the most fundamental sense. The baby let out a small cry, and Elias instinctively moved closer. Lumina nodded, and he reached out, allowing the infant to touch his fingers. The simple act was a reaffirmation of their connection, a reminder that life, no matter how different, could understand care and compassion. As night fell, Elias reflected on everything they had endured. The predators, the alien terrain, the constant threat of danger. It had all tested him, challenged him, and ultimately revealed the best of humanity. He knew that the journey was not over. The forest still held mysteries, and the future of Lumina's species depended on their continued vigilance. But for the first time, he allowed himself a sense of hope. They had survived together, learned from one another, and built a fragile sanctuary in the heart of an alien world. Elias understood that this was the true essence of humanity, the ability to answer a cry, to protect the vulnerable, and to form connections that could overcome any obstacle. In the distance, The mist swirled, glowing softly under the light of distant,